Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Maeve. I'm here with Gabby. Gabby, you had a really exciting match last for that Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC. We're brought to you by Elgato. But Gabby, I think we have a world-class match coming up for our fourth round of the day.
Yeah, these next two trainers that we're going to be featuring are no stranger to some of the larger, more prestigious tournaments that happen, when things are more normal. So I'm very excited to see how this match between Spain and the United States is going to play out. As if we take a look at the scoreboard right now between Spain and the United States, it is currently tied 1-1. So both these teams really need this win to get that key early advantage.
Yeah, and I think with both of these players, they have a lot riding on them. And these are two, of course, really great classic teams. Tough for us because we're United States fans, and Victory Road is brought to us by people from Spain who work very hard. So I think a little bit of a bias on our end plus their end. But we have for this match, we have the Pokey Alex Gómez, and Jeremy Rodrigues, which you guys saw during break. So some really talented players, some really interesting choices as well. Pretty standard choices for three of these restricteds, but also that Lunala, which is a Pokemon that I love. Alex, though, we'll be starting off with him, and he is going to be starting with that Zacian as his restricted.
Yeah, a very interesting team of Zacian, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Regieleki, Urshifu Rapid Strike, and Gothitelle being able to trap Pokemon on the field, which can be very helpful depending on what your Zacian matchup looks like. And again, Alex, no stranger to the world stage of the competition, getting top 8 at the World Championships in 2019, winning the UK National Championships back in 2016, and winning a regional championship back in 2015. I'm very excited to see how he's going to pilot this team as, a lot of times when we see Incineroar and Rillaboom on the same team together, they're going to be switching around a lot. But with the potential of him bringing Gothitelle, I think that can really disrupt some of those like switching strategies. And as a result, Alex's Pokemon may not have to rotate around as much and be able to go for that big damage.
Yeah, like you said, playing against Zacian is definitely one of those very position-heavy matchups. So Jeremy is going to have a really tough matchup if he isn't able to possibly pivot, but he's running a Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is one of those Pokemon that you don't always want to sit in front of when it gets those Grim boosts, along with an Entei, Rillaboom, Regieleki, Urshifu, and Togekiss. So Togekiss, I think, is a really interesting pick here. Has the opportunity for some things like Follow Me, and if it is holding that Babiri Berry, Gabby, it could be something that could probably take a hit from that Zacian and maybe help out some of its partners.
Yeah, and the Entei also has the potential to go for Sacred Fire to burn Zacian as well. So a lot of tools here both these trainers have access to in terms of the matchup. I spent a lot of time talking about Gothitelle on Alex's team, knowing that Jeremy has brought the Calyrex Shadow Rider. That really makes it a lot more difficult for the Gothitelle as it can be knocked out by one pretty easy hit from that Pokemon, assuming, it has a KO under its belt already. But again, Jeremy also no stranger getting to the world stage, getting top 4 at the LATAM International Championships in 2019, winning the North American International Championships the year prior, and a couple of regional championships as well. So this is going to be a really fun matchup to watch play out. I think there's going to be a lot of the matchups sort of played out at team preview when these trainers decide what Pokemon they're going to bring. So I'm really excited to see that. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also very excited to see what both of these trainers bring. Interesting to see the Gothitelle on a team that is so standard, where you have that core of Rillaboom, Urshifu, and Incineroar, and then you also have that Regieleki, so it's very standard. But I think throwing that Gothitelle in there can really throw you for a loop, because if you can set yourself up and get that Gothitelle in while that Calyrex isn't on the field, I think you can put yourself in a really good position, especially maybe if that Zacian has something like a Sacred Sword, and you can allow yourself to set up a little bit and take care of maybe some other partner Pokemon while they can't do as much damage to you. But like you said, this is very much a team preview team, very matchup dependent, especially if you're able to handle something from either of these Pokemon or put yourself in a good position, which can be a little tougher if you don't have those switch out moves, Gabby.
It can be, but we did get to see this match from Alex's perspective, I believe, and as a result, we know he did not bring the Gothitelle, so should make things a little bit more interesting for us.
Yeah, actually, I believe we're seeing it from Jeremy's side. Or sorry, no, you might be right, Alex's side. My brain cannot tell. But Zacian comes in first with that Regieleki, and then we have Entei and Regieleki as well. Like you said, right, Alex's side. I was believing he would be in Spanish, of course. But a great lead for both these trainers because you do have the opportunity to get your Intrepid Sword boost up and possibly slow down the opponent Pokemon. But a Sacred Fire is not a move you want to take.
No, it is not, and I think as a result, Alex has to be very careful about what he decides to do with this Zacian this turn. Knowing that the Regieleki does have access to Electro Web means that Zacian, if Alex is worried about that Entei holding something like Choice Scarf, Zacian could simply protect this turn, and then go for an attack for some big damage into that Entei after its speed has been lowered. But no protect from anybody at the start of this turn.
No protect. Electro Web comes out onto both the Pokemon on Jeremy's side, slowing them down, but a Volt Switch from Jeremy's Regieleki into the Zacian does a pretty good chunk of damage and allows him to pivot in and out here. So at least gives him the opportunity, thinking forward in that game, I can pivot in and out with my Regieleki and possibly slow some Pokemon down. But if it is carrying that Focus Sash is now broken by Alex, which is a really great move as well, as he prepares to bring in one of his Pokemon to replace it. Could be something with Fake Out, maybe that Rillaboom, something that may be more comfortable taking an electric type attack as well in the future, or even could be something like that Togekiss if he brought it, and just allow him to maybe get a Follow Me Up so that he can handle something, but instead, it's the Calyrex, which also loves to be able to put out some pretty strong damage onto all of these Pokemon here, and, possibly go for something like those Astral Barrages in the next turn. Zacian goes for a Behemoth Blade, though. If this went into the Regieleki slot, this Calyrex is going to be dealing with a ton of damage right off the bat, and that is bringing it down to its Focus Sash, actually. So a Focus Sash Calyrex here, hanging on with just 1 HP. Entei goes for that Sacred Fire. Jeremy really has to hope for either a burn or a knockout here. It gets the burn onto this Regieleki, but that means no damage onto the Zacian.
No, and I think more importantly, the Regieleki still will be able to go for a second Electro Web to pick up the KO on Calyrex now that it's down to Focus Sash. So Alex in a very strong position at the start of this second turn. I like how Jeremy gave himself the opportunity to try and sneak that Calyrex on the field. Unfortunately, though, he just took so much damage for it. I think that maybe he was hoping that Alex would attack with maybe not Behemoth Blade, maybe the Entei would be enough of a threat to keep the Zacian off the field itself or otherwise redirect the attack target from it. But Alex was able to sort of call that bluff and say, I think you're going to be more worried about Regieleki than anything else. Therefore, yeah, that's how that worked out.
Yeah, that Extreme Speed, though, was able to take out that Regieleki right out of the gate, though, so wasn't able to get that knockout onto the Calyrex, and Astral Barrage does a ton of single target damage, enough that Zacian isn't able to set up a substitute either, so now this Zacian's looking very unhealthy, almost in a similar position, and if you send in something like this Rillaboom like Alex has, maybe you can go for something like a Grassy Glide, just to get that last bit of just to get knocked out for that last bit of damage and make sure there's no Grenade.
You could, but then you have to worry about this Rillaboom taking the Sacred Fire from Entei. Given that it's holding the Assault Vest, it's probably a bulkier Rillaboom, could probably take one attack before, and get 2 of those Grassy Glides in. But this is still going to be a bit of a tough spot for Alex, as, the Incineroar is going to struggle to deal damage to the Entei, and, hypothetically, even if this Rillaboom forewent the Grassy Glide into the Calyrex and decided to target down that Entei, it doesn't even have high horsepower to be able to hit for super effective damage. So, I think that Alex had the right idea going into this turn 1, but Entei with the Extreme Speed was able to, keep Calyrex around long enough to stop Zacian from substituting, and as a result, Alex is on the back foot. That being said, Jeremy still has to be a little bit cautious here, knowing that one of your Pokemon in the back is Regieleki and that there's a full health Rillaboom on the field is not necessarily the best spot to be in, as a Grassy Glide from Rillaboom can KO most Regieleki, especially if they're not holding something like a Focus Sash. So that's something that Jeremy has to be careful of, but has the opportunity now to go for two really big attacks against it. Sacred Fire plus the Astral Barrage. Even if Astral Barrage misses the KO this turn, or even if the Rillaboom is able to attack and doesn't go for Fake Out, Jeremy's still going to have that Entei around, and that's going to be really important.
Yeah, Togekiss actually comes out here, though, instead of Calyrex. Entei goes for another Extreme Speed into that Zacian, just fishing for that knockout, which it does get. So now Zacian is off the field. Alex has lost his Restricted right on this turn. Rillaboom able to go for the Grassy Glide into the Togekiss, but it does very little damage because it's not very effective. Would have been able to knock out that Calyrex, but Calyrex can hang on a little bit longer.
It can, and so can Regieleki, as Alex is down to his last two Pokemon. And if you're worried about Rillaboom matching up against Regieleki, having a Togekiss and a Entei on the field is really going to make that advantageous. Alex can go for a Fake Out this turn to flinch that Togekiss. That's something that, will stop it from attacking. But then Entei is still free to go for the Sacred Fire into the Rillaboom, fish for a burn, and then Togekiss can finish up the knockout in the next turn.
Yeah, Fake Out onto the Togekiss, so no helping hand or anything here, but a knockout onto the Entei will at least remove the Assault Vest, so now you know it's not carrying that Choice Scarf, but you're going to take a Sacred Fire for it, get knocked down to 1 HP, and that Rillaboom we saw as Assault Vest, Gabby, so that is a little bit of a hidden Focus Sash there, I believe, possibly a damage roll as well.
I think that's something Alex most likely trained for, and it's great because you do have that opportunity to attack once more, but unfortunately, I think the best thing Alex can hope for at this point is a little bit more information about that Togekiss, but won't even get that, as Extreme Speed is enough for the KO.
Yeah, Extreme Speed has been the absolute hero of this game. Togekiss goes for an Air Slash into the Incineroar. Incineroar goes for a Throat Chop, but it fails this turn because not able to really do any damage, no possible moves coming out later. So really crazy turn here, I believe. Extreme Speed has knocked out 3 out of Alex's 4 Pokemon, so he's going to have to really kind of gain some information possibly in these last few turns that he has, especially now this Entei, it's not Choice Scarf, it's Assault Vest, that Regieleki doesn't have a Focus Sash because the Calyrex was holding it, so at least you have to possibly think if that Regieleki is that Choice Scarf and that Regieleki can go fast because the Entei isn't holding it, what your speed tiers are kind of going to look like for that second game.
I was laughing to myself a little bit because I was thinking, well, you could also just play out this turn and see what happens first, a crit or a flinch from that Togekiss, but I don't think you necessarily want to find out Togekiss's item that way. But just throwing it out there, good way to scout for that. If it flinches, probably, Serene Grace and something. If it crits, probably Scope Lens.
Oakland Superlog carried me through, I think, Series 2 of Pokemon VGC in 2020. So a little bit of a throwback, I believe. But, also knowing that Togekiss doesn't have it may not have Helping Hand, may also just have chosen not to show it. We saw the Air Slash as its offensive move. Right now, they're typically only carrying one offensive move and then some other moves to kind of help out in the meantime. I think is another thing to pay attention to. It could have it, just may have hidden that in the next, in that turn. So I think there's going to need to be some adjustment, especially in that turn 1. You can't lose your Regieleki so early, and you have to protect your Zacian, especially because that Extreme Speed is so good.
I mean, if we also want to take a moment to talk about held items, it's possible that that was a speed tie, and the Regieleki on Jeremy's side of the field is holding a Choice Scarf as well. Or it's possible that Regieleki's holding an item like a magnet to increase damage, and as a result, it's always going to be consistently slower than Alex's Regieleki. Just something to keep in mind, as I think it really is an information game at this point. I really liked how Jeremy played that matchup, and I think that Jeremy had a really great advantage for the start of that game. I mean, knowing that the Calyrex Shadow had Focus Sash and was able to hold on and stop Zacian from going for that substitute was a really key turn. It's just at the end of that game, unfortunately, it did not quite work out, I think, the way that both that these trainers were hoping for. So going in for adjustments, I'm really curious to see if we're going to get another Regieleki lead, or if we're possibly going to see something like Togekiss and that Calyrex Shadow coming out on the field for Jeremy as a start to try and give him more of an opportunity to get those Astral Barrages, to get the Grimnay boost, and get that snowball going.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you can kind of handle the speed a little bit better. Calyrex and Togekiss, like you said, Gabby, so that is going to be a really nice lead, possibly to have Helping Hand, possibly for Follow Me. And then you see Regieleki and Incineroar this turn, so Fake Out is on the field possibly for that Togekiss, but you may also use something like that Throat Chop to get some super effective damage off onto that Calyrex Shadow Rider, and able to slow it down maybe with an Electro Web.
It's a tough spot for Togekiss to be in for sure, as, you know, Regieleki is that one Pokemon that you really don't want to see on the opposite side of the field, as it's just going to do so much damage into that Togekiss. But you also have to wonder if Alex will keep that Regieleki on the field, knowing that it's Choice Scarf, or at least we know. And knowing that the Calyrex Shadow is guaranteed to attack this turn, as it cannot be flinched since it's a Ghost-type Pokemon. So even if you're a little bit worried about the damage you're going to take from something like a Follow Me plus a Astral Barrage, it could give your Calyrex a little bit of a buffer, and as a result, go for that big damage on the Regieleki, and then possibly after you have the Grimnay boost, you can use like a Mud Shot or some other attack to target into that Incineroar. Given that we're seeing Jeremy make the switch here, could be an indication that he doesn't have those tools available to him.
Yeah, Togekiss goes for that Protect as well, so not going to be able to get faked out or deal with a Thunder. And we saw that this is a Choice Scarf Calyrex, so that is a really interesting piece of info to know. Throat Chop from the Incineroar into the Entei that switched in, so a much nicer switch in from Jeremy on turn 1, where he's not sending in a Pokemon getting knocked down to their Focus Sash, and a lot more defensive.
The Thunder, though, is such a risky play, as it is only going to be 70% accurate, so it's a bit of a rough thing to lock into, especially with a Choice Scarf. You know, I think that if a Pokemon can take advantage of it, Regieleki is certainly going to be the best shot, as it's already such a powerful Pokemon, but could put things a little bit of a role for Alex going into this turn. And given that the Togekiss is even leaving the field, I'm not necessarily sure that's a role that you want to continue going for.
Yeah, and Rillaboom is going to take a Thunder if it connects far, far better than a Togekiss will. Rillaboom able to get that Grassy Surge up as well, possibly heal up its partner Entei a little bit, but it will take a Thunder for its troubles in that switch, and still does a pretty good chunk of damage in all things considered. Entei goes for a Sacred Fire into the Regieleki. That is not enough to knock it out. Gets that burn again, though, so that Regieleki now burn may not be able to survive after this turn. A Parting Shot for the Entei from the Incineroar on Alex's side will allow him to pivot out, but what is he going to bring in, Gabby? This is a really tough spot, because this Regieleki is possibly going to get knocked out this turn before it can get in, take care of that Togekiss.
I want to give Regieleki their props, though. You know, props where props are due. You did about 50% damage to that Rillaboom with Thunder. Like, that's a lot of damage. So, you know, even though Regieleki will be knocked out you know, honestly, probably by either a Grassy Glide or a Extreme Speed from that Entei this turn, I think that it did a fantastic job of trying to get whatever damage it could down onto the field. It's just unfortunate for Alex that Jeremy has had these nice pivots really in Game 1 and Game 2 that have kept the pressure consistently on the field for him. I like the reveal of the Urshifu as an adjustment, as those Surging Strikes are certainly going to deal a ton of damage to Entei, but knowing that Rillaboom is on the field for Jeremy now, it seems like Jeremy has a pretty simple turn of just Extreme Speed to knock out the Regieleki, Grassy Glide to most likely bring that Urshifu down to Sash if that's what it's holding, and then next turn, again, really easy to pick up those KOs.
Yeah, but that Regieleki not going to get knocked out this turn as it switches out for the Incineroar. Going to get a nice Intimidate off onto the Rillaboom mostly, which could be helpful if it is going to deal with some Grassy Glide damage, but a Detect from the Urshifu. Rillaboom goes for a Fake Out into that Protect as well, so not going to be able to do anything here. Entei goes for a Stone Edge onto the Incineroar, which does connect, so a very interesting move here from that Entei, you know, not locking into Extreme Speed.
It's a mix, or it's a excuse me, it's a prediction when you think about it, since the Stone Edge is less accurate than any of the other attacks that Entei has, but if you're facing off against a Regieleki that stays in, I mean, technically Stone Edge is slightly more likely to connect than Thunder is. So, maybe things will work in your favor in that sense. But if Alex decides to switch and sends in that Incineroar once again, you will be able to connect a super effective attack, which will deal a decent amount of more damage to it. So I really like that play from Jeremy there, and I like how he's keeping the Entei safe for further plays as well.
Yeah, Togekiss is going to take that Entei's place with a hard switch here. Rillaboom goes for the Grassy Glide. This will go into the Urshifu. Urshifu pretty bulky here, though. We saw it as that Mystic Water, which tends to be a little bit on the bulkier side. Surging Strikes from this Urshifu is going to do a pretty decent chunk of damage onto this Togekiss. Getting the nice amount of damage with those 3 strikes will also possibly, maybe reveal if it is a berry for like a citrus, but it isn't. So another piece of info to know. A parting shot also into that Togekiss as well. So that will at least lower the attack, or the, will at least lower the power of those air slashes maybe. It's not going to lower any critical hit or flinches though.
It isn't. I think that the Urshifu was also helped out by the Intimidate from that Incineroar, so that it could take the Grassy Glide. And I bring that up because I think Alex is in a position where he has to throw a second Intimidate down onto the field for that Rillaboom once again. Not really for the sake of the Zacian, as it should be able to survive the turn without taking too much damage, but because this Urshifu is going to be knocked out by another Grassy Glide, and there's really nothing stopping that priority attack other than the terrain possibly winding down in a couple turns. So I do like the reveal of the Zacian here. I think this is the great opportunity for Alex to go for Substitute and actually get it this time, since again these Pokemon are going to struggle to deal damage to Zacian, but it may come at the cost of the Urshifu on the field, which given Entei is still lurking in the back of Jeremy's party, that could be a really key loss.
Yeah, helping hand here actually from the Togekiss first. To help its partner Rillaboom, we see the Detect from the Urshifu. So if this is a Grassy Glide into the Urshifu, it's not going to be able to do any real damage through that Protect, and a Substitute from that Zacian, able to successfully get that up, but a Wood Hammer into the Zacian. So a really nice spot because of that Substitute. It isn't going to be taking the full force of that Wood Hammer. It will lose its Substitute, however, which can be a little bit tougher, but it is still going to mean that Rillaboom takes a little bit of recoil, and you're still going to get that Grassy Terrain HP recovery.
And you're also going to burn down another turn of the Grassy Terrain on the field. And again, given that the Urshifu is in a spot where it does not have Detect available to it anymore, and we still do see the terrain on the field, switching Incineroar here to get another Intimidate down is a good idea. But Alex really free to stall for a couple of turns. Helping Hand Woodhammer is enough to break the Substitute. That's really important information to know. But if Alex is so worried about this terrain, keeping Zacian on the field and forcing Jeremy to continue clicking Helping Hand Woodhammer will certainly help buy that time he needs to make things a little bit more comfortable for that Urshifu.
Yeah, Intimidate going to be super helpful as well. Like you said, onto that Rillaboom. Allow for some fake out pressure in the next turn, which could be nice. Togekiss switches out here though, so Togekiss is going to swap back in for Entei. Entei not going to be able to get faked out on that next turn, so it could do some really powerful damage here. Grassy Glide into the Incineroar doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Zacian gets another Substitute up, and it won't get knocked out this turn either, so it's going to be free to go for an attack on that next turn, even if that Entei is able to go for something like that Sacred Fire.
Zacian, I think, has to target the Rillaboom this turn. As tempting as it is to get the Entei off the field, since Sacred Fire, not only are you taking a lot of damage from that, but you also have to worry about that burn chance as well. The thing about the Rillaboom is that the Rillaboom is in a position where it can really threaten your Urshifu, which is the Pokemon that's going to help you out the most against this Entei, especially since we know that it can switch its attack, so it's not exactly locked into a Choice Scarf. I think that maybe if you predict a Protect on the Rillaboom, you can double into the Entei, but Rillaboom really is the key Pokemon to keep an eye out for, and if Alex is unable to get it off the field and loses the Zacian or the Incineroar as a result, that's going to make the matchup again a lot tougher as we progress closer towards this endgame.
Yeah, Togekiss switches in for Rillaboom though, possibly allowing for that Grassy Terrain to come back later. Behemoth Blade, though, going to go into one of these Pokemon. If it goes into that Togekiss, it's going to be able to knock out, but instead goes into the Entei, gets it down to under half of its HP here, so at least this Entei is now a little bit easier to deal with maybe 1 or 2 more hits. Sacred Fire will go into that substitute. That should easily be enough to take out that substitute for this turn. So that means that Zacian isn't going to be nearly as protected in the next turn. The Throat Chop, though, from the Incineroar into the Entei brings it down to 25% of its HP, and maybe we'll be able to take care of it on that next turn with that extra damage.
But Togekiss is back out on the field and can redirect attacks away from Entei, assuming it does have Follow Me. So, even though the Entei is in a bit of jeopardy, as long as Togekiss is around, I think that the Zacian still has to be very careful. And it's a tough choice for Alex, too, because if you predict that the Entei is going to go for another attack, or maybe if you predict that the Togekiss is going to protect and not necessarily Follow Me, you really do want to target down that Entei to guarantee the knockout. But if Jeremy goes for a simple Follow Me Sacred Fire play and Alex doesn't protect or doesn't go for a substitute, that's going to be big damage on Zacian, and that's also going to be that burn chance as well.
Yeah, Zacian will protect this turn at least. Follow Me from the Togekiss is going to come out here. Will at least show that, like you said, it is not going to be able to do any damage to that Entei. Entei, though, goes for the Sacred Fire into the protected Zacian, while a Parting Shot from the Incineroar into the Togekiss, mainly, I believe, to mostly just help it pivot in and out of here, possibly get that Urshifu in to kind of give a hand, or that Regieleki to go for some sort of double targeting move that could be pretty helpful, like that Electro Web.
I think Electro Web is way better than Urshifu at this point, which is a little bit weird to say because, I was spending all that time talking about how important Urshifu is in this matchup. Just because the Togekiss is sitting there, or floating there, I guess would be more appropriate, means that Regieleki, like that double target with the Electro Web is going to be really important. That's going to give the opportunity to lower the speed of the Entei's attack so that the Zacian is guaranteed to go first. It's going to deal some nice chip damage to that Togekiss. And, honestly, at this range, probably could find a knockout on this Entei as well, assuming it's not the Assault Vest. So just a lot of things for Alex to keep an eye out for. And, he also has to worry about, well, if Jeremy just double protects so that the Regieleki, will get knocked out by burn damage, what do I do in that situation too? You have to try and get substitute back up. So it's really precarious. And I think the thing that I want to focus in on is the fact that Jeremy, still hasn't revealed the last Pokemon that he's brought to this game yet. If that Calyrex Shadow is still lurking in the back of his party, that's going to be really tough for Alex to deal with since his Pokemon have taken so much damage.
Yeah, Rillaboom switches in for that Togekiss. Possibly, I'm more worried, I believe, about an extreme speed to allow that knockout really quickly on that Regieleki, which it will be. So that Regieleki, now completely knocked out by that extreme speed, isn't going to be able to lower either of the speeds of either of these two Pokemon. Zacian goes for a Behemoth Blade. I believe we saw it was targeted into what that Togekiss was, and not into the Entei, but instead into the Entei on that move change. I believe he swapped it around, making those decisions. Like you said, a pretty precarious spot. At least getting that Entei off of the field, though, is really nice for Alex because he can bring his Urshifu in and, maybe go for something like a Protect to stall out a Fake Out and a Grassy Glide, maybe, but you still have to deal with this terrain.
Exactly, and as a result, I'm glad to see that Alex is sending in the Incineroar instead, because even though you're going to have the slower Fake Out in this situation, the Intimidate will certainly help the Urshifu along, and furthermore, having Throat Chop to deal damage to that Calyrex is going to be really important. The downside is that Incineroar, doesn't really carry Protect, and as a result is going to take some big damage this turn, either from, Fake Out plus a Astral Barrage, or maybe even a double from the Rillaboom and the Calyrex. But it's at enough health, and I think still has the berry access as well, that it should be all right. If Alex is able to get the Zacian to connect a Behemoth Blade to the Rillaboom, knock it out, then that'll certainly help him out for when that Urshifu makes an appearance. But Calyrex Shadow is the fastest Pokemon on the field at this point, is going to really be not too worried about that Urshifu, all things considered, especially if it still has that Focus Sash in place as well. So this is the perfect opportunity for Jeremy to put some big damage down onto the field with this Shadow Calyrex, and I'm really curious to see how much this Astral Barrage is going to do.
Yeah, the Astro Barrage connects with both of these Pokemon after a fake out. And Gabby, I think with that peek that we get from Alex's side, that Incineroar is safety goggles, so it's not even going to be holding a berry. While the Behemoth Blade from the Zacian will connect onto the Calyrex, brings it down to that Focus Sash again, like we saw. So a tough spot now because you may be at the end of a Grassy Glide, and another Astro Barrage will be able to take out both of these Pokemon, I believe, especially because that Zacian is so close. So a really tough spot, I think.
Yeah, it is, but Jeremy does still have the Togekiss in the back, and if he wanted to, he could possibly go for a protect this turn with the Calyrex. Maybe even just switch out the Calyrex for the Togekiss outright. Have Rillaboom deal a little bit more chip damage with a Wood Hammer to Zacian or this Incineroar, and then with the combination of Togekiss on the field and the Calyrex just holding on enough for one more attack, power through the Zacian and the Incineroar. I don't think another Astral Barrage is going to quite be a knockout without a little bit more chip down on both these Pokemon. It didn't do as much as I was expecting, honestly, and that's most likely because it hasn't gotten any of the boost from Grimnay yet, as it hasn't gotten any knockouts. But still, this is a very precarious position here. If Togekiss comes out onto the field and Alex calls that, that would be certainly really bad news for Jeremy.
Yeah, Zacian protects, though. Rillaboom goes for a Grassy Glide into that Incineroar, does a little bit of chip damage there, while the Incineroar is going to take another Astral Barrage. And I believe with that bit of chip damage, this should be enough to knock out that Incineroar and get one Grimnay boost up for this Calyrex. It is enough to knock it out, so it will be one Grimnay boost at least for this Calyrex. You're going to have to send in a Pokemon. That Aqua Jet maybe could be pretty helpful from that Urshifu if it is able to connect on that, especially because there is no fake out right now from that Rillaboom because it is brand new on the field. But like you said, if something like that Togekiss comes in and goes for a Follow Me or swaps out for that Calyrex is going to be in a good spot to stay defensive and come back in maybe later in the game.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen Calyrex use Protect at all in these two games. I'm trying to remember. But hypothetically, we know it's Focus Sash, so I have to assume that that is available to it. If it goes for a Protect here this turn, then the Rillaboom should be free to go for a Grassy Glide into the Urshifu for the knockout. Calyrex wins. If Calyrex switches into the Togekiss, it'll be giving up that Grimnay boost and will be caught off guard by a Behemoth Blade, assuming Alex continues to be locked into that move, and therefore possibly opening things up for a game 3. The Rillaboom here really needs to be careful and try and consistently keep the pressure on this Urshifu while still being cautious of just how much damage the Zacian can do, as both Calyrex and Zacian are perfectly equipped to end this game still.
Yeah, 3 minutes left as we hit the tail end of this game. Grassy Glide into the protected Urshifu slot. The Togekiss switched in for that Calyrex and will be taking this Behemoth Blade, showing that it is not Babiri Berry either for that item, like I may have hinted at earlier, and that is enough to knock that Togekiss out, that very powerful Steel-type move. And that means that this Calyrex can come in. It can take an Aqua Jet, Gabby, I think, which could be really important, but this Rillaboom may be faster with that Grassy Glide.
I don't think so, provided that grassy terrain remains up, as I think that they're both priority 1, and the Urshifu is just naturally faster than a Rillaboom regardless. So Calyrex probably forced to protect this turn, but honestly, Jeremy has staggered the protects enough so that unless Alex is able to get a double detect, which is the same odds of a double protect, really, here, and not take the Grassy Glide from that Rillaboom, I think that Jeremy should be able to take this game, and it's going to be really close, and I find it really interesting that Alex isn't even playing to the timer at this point, instead just trying to get those knockouts.
Yeah, that Aqua Jet enough to knock out the Calyrex, so Calyrex won't be able to go for an Astral Barrage here, but this means Rillaboom is going to have to deal with this Grassy Glide into that Urshifu. It is enough to knock it out. This Rillaboom is still at a pretty decent amount of health too, so something like a Wood Hammer could do a ton of damage without fear of knocking itself out, but it is going to take a Behemoth Blade. This super powerful move from this Zacian, who's been able to hang on the field, is not enough to knock it out though, so this Rillaboom able to hang on a little bit. They'll both get some grassy terrain recovery, most importantly, but Gabby, I think you're going to have to hope for that Wood Hammer knockout.
I don't think the Urshifu is going, or excuse me, I don't think the Rillaboom is going to have the opportunity to go for it, though, as Zacian is naturally faster, and Behemoth Blade doesn't miss, so it looks like we will be heading on to a Game 3, but what a close Game 2 this was.
Oh, absolutely. And this is our first game 3 of the day, Gabby. We have had a lot of very fast matches. So, really well adjusted by both players. I thought the Urshifu was a really great bring, able to, put on a little bit more pressure and get that priority pressure like that Entei was able to show in games 1 and 2. So, Entei being able to show that it has a lot of that extreme speed's super important in that game 1. You were able to take out 3 of the 4 Pokemon with it and just completely change the flow of the game to your momentum. But I think that Alex played the second game a lot slower, a lot more defensively, and even switching out that Regieleki, allowing it to possibly come back in later and maybe go for an Electro Web, even if it was knocked out by grassy terrain. I think that this is one of those games of priority moves on both sides, even if the speed tiers are even if Calyrex is running faster than Zacian or anything like that, it's a little tough spot because you got to count on your terrain and you got to keep track of who can hit what and if you have a fake out left or anything like that.
I honestly just want to see more from this Calyrex Shadow though, as it's holding a focus sash. We've established that fact quite well, I think, but there was that turn towards the end where if the Shadow Calyrex had gone for Protect, it would have been a lot easier, I think, for Jeremy to win that game. So, looking at the usage stats for Calyrex Shadow, Protect is number 2 on there. So it could have just been like too deep of a read. Maybe, Jeremy was expecting a slower play from Alex and as a result didn't think he had to go for the Protect there. Or could just be an indication of a really bizarre moveset, maybe opting for Substitute over Protect. If that is true, and if we see another Togekiss Shadow Calyrex lead from Jeremy, then it's possible we could see a follow me substitute play, and that would really change things up based off of what we saw in games 1 and 2, as a lot of times Alex was relying on the singular hit Behemoth Blade to deal that big damage to get those KOs. I think a majority of the knockouts we saw in games 1 and 2 so far from Alex have been thanks to Behemoth Blade on Zacian.
Yeah, and I do think that Regieleki as a lead is still very smart, especially like you said, Gabby, if you're dealing with something like that Togekiss and that Calyrex, having the Regieleki to put on that thunder pressure for that game, even if it does, just under 50% to the opponent's Rillaboom and you have to deal with some switching around. I think that it is such a offensive force to deal with, especially, it has that double target move option, which is really the only double targeting move on this entire team. You've got, there's no Snarl on that Incineroar, and we haven't seen the Gothitelle, so we don't know what moves it is carrying exactly, but having Electro Web to be able to put pressure onto both of these Pokemon is pretty important, I think, especially trying to slow down the game for yourself.
Yeah, and also important in the sense that you can break Focus Sash. That little bit of chip, I think, is also going to be really key if against the Rillaboom and Entei in particular, since these are both Pokemon that Alex has missed KOs on. But looks like we're having a bit of a mix-up from Alex, and good news, I think, sort of, for the Urshifu.
Yeah, this is a Fire, Water, Grass core lead for sure. Here you've got the Incineroar and the Urshifu for Alex, Rillaboom and Entei for Jeremy. So, some Intimidate coming out onto that Rillaboom, some fake out pressure, the faster fake out Jeremy also has. So we'll be able to possibly fake out that Incineroar as well on Alex's side, but you've got some threats right here, Gabby, of those Surging Strikes.
You do, and as a result, I think that Jeremy does have to consider, foregoing a fake out or, targeting that Urshifu spot this turn with a Wood Hammer even, just to do that big damage, because if Urshifu is allowed to connect a single, well, it's a multi-hit attack, but a single Surging Strikes against that Entei, it's probably going to get knocked out for its trouble. And that's going to be really key for Alex, since this Entei has really been the Pokemon that's caused him so much trouble in Game 1 and Game 2.
Yeah, and this Entei is trained super defensively. We saw it had that Assault Vest as well. Incineroar, though, going to swap out, bring in Zacian in this game for Alex. So Zacian coming out on the field very early in comparison to that last game. Detect, though, from the Urshifu, so not going to be dealing with anything like a Grassy Glide or a Wood Hammer. It was a Fake Out, though, so Fake Out not able to connect. Entei goes for the Sacred Fire as well onto that Urshifu slot, so nice for Zacian to get in here free and possibly go for something like a Substitute in the next turn.
I really like the Zacian switch there, because a Sacred Fire into that Incineroar was just not a likely play from Jeremy. So Alex very smartly calling that and giving the Zacian the opportunity to go for a substitute this turn. Now, Entei could decide to break the substitute with Sacred Fire, as we saw in the previous game, but that'll mean Zacian can only take so much damage this turn, does not have to worry about getting burned. Alex could also just decide to go for a Protect, as it is the Zacian's first turn on the field, but regardless of what Alex does, I think he has to remove this Urshifu, because until grassy terrain is gone, we're in the same spots that we were in games 1 and 2, where a couple of hits will easily pick up that KO.
Yeah, but a second Intimidate on that Rillaboom is going to be pretty helpful to mitigate the damage there. Substitute from that Zacian as well. Entei goes for the Sacred Fire. This will connect onto the substitute, will be enough to get rid of that substitute like we saw in game 2. So that substitute means you're not taking that full brunt of that damage. Rillaboom goes for the Wood Hammer onto that Incineroar, so a really nice switch in, because that does so little damage to that Incineroar and allows you to have Fake Out in the next turn on that Zacian to maybe get some big damage off.
Or you could go for another Parting Shot on that Rillaboom and punish it for staying on the field for so many turns. We saw after 1 Intimidate, the Urshifu was a 2-hit knockout for Grassy Glide. I think after 2 Intimidates, it's probably going to be around 3 hits, depending on, what kind of damage rolls that we see. And if you go for a Parting Shot and another Intimidate switch on top of that, this Rillaboom is really going to be struggling to deal damage. That's certainly great for Alex. The Rillaboom is a huge threat, but you still do have this Entei on the field as well, and I believe that the Entei is still the Pokemon that you have to worry about, not just because of damage, but because of those burns. There have been so many times where Zacian players just get burned off of a Scald, or burned off of a Flare Blitz, or burned off of a Sacred Fire, and then as a result, the Zacian just isn't really able to deal damage, and the game goes to their opponent without much struggle. I think that's what Alex has to continue to be careful about here. Not so much damage, just that burn threat.
Yeah, substitute from Zacian. Calyrex also switched in for that Rillaboom, so if this is a Parting Shot, it could be really nice damage. Stone Edge, though, seeing that threat is that Incineroar, gets that damage up onto the Incineroar slot. Parting Shot also actually goes into the Entei here, so it is going to lower the attack, which could be pretty helpful, especially because we know how strong that Entei is, and it is a Solve Vest, so we know that it's not choiced into anything. With that choice band, it can still go for multiple different types of moves. Regieleki switches in, though, through that Parting Shot. Great opportunity for some damage here with that Electro Web to break that Focus Sash and slow these Pokemon down.
And that speed control is going to be really important for Alex, as it'll pressure Entei and Calyrex off the field a little bit more. And given that the Zacian is set up behind a substitute at this point in time, Alex wants those switches. Every turn that Jeremy switches one of his Pokemon around is a turn where he's able to capitalize and go for a Behemoth Blade and guarantee connect it with its target. And even if it's not going to be dealing super effective damage, maybe it's even a little bit resisted by the Entei, it's still a Zacian with Behemoth Blade that's going to be dealing plenty of damage for the trouble. So I like how Alex has positioned this Regieleki on the field here, and we'll have to see how Jeremy's going to respond to it, as Rillaboom would be able to switch in quite easily here, but no switching.
Yeah, Protect as well from that Zacian. So Zacian not dealing with any damage, gonna let this Regieleki go for its own thing with that Electro Web. It is so fast, so it is gonna be able to go faster than these two, lower both of their speed, but most importantly, break that Focus Sash. And now that it is slower, this Calyrex going for that Astral Barrage could get hit with a Behemoth Blade next turn and get knocked out, because we saw it would be a one-hit knockout. That Astral Barrage, though, ton of damage onto that Regieleki, is able to take that hit. Sacred Fire from the Entei, though, into that protected substitute Zacian slot. So a great turn, I think, for Alex positionally.
Oh, definitely. It's true that the Alecki will be knocked out most likely by an extreme speed this turn, but the fact that Zacian was able to stay on the field, keep the substitute up, is really going to help it out this turn, as now Calyrex will be knocked out by a single Behemoth Blade. So I really like this play from Alex there, and if he is able to successfully knock out the Calyrex this turn, or alternatively is able to connect Behemoth Blade with a Pokemon like Rillaboom, which is going to cause him so much trouble, as it's forced back out onto the field, I think that'll give him the advantage he needs, so that he doesn't have to worry too much about Entei anymore. He doesn't have to worry about what that mysterious last Pokemon is on Jeremy's side of the field. And the fact that Regieleki is being saved for later as well, should put this should put this Urshifu in a very interesting spot.
Yeah, Calyrex shows Protect here, though. So Behemoth Blade into that protected Calyrex slot is a really interesting choice because we didn't see that last game. Sacred Fire, though, will be able to take out that Substitute. So that Substitute is now faded for Alex. Alex must have thought the same thing we did, Gabby, where there would be no Protect on that Calyrex and he'd have a free hit there. But now you have to worry about this Urshifu. Could possibly get a Surging Strikes up onto this Pokemon, this Entei for Jeremy. But now I'm really curious as to this moveset, and now Rillaboom could come on the field and get that grassy terrain back up as well.
Really, I'm not too surprised about the Protect again, given the usage stats. I feel like it was a given. But I am curious about the fact that Calyrex decided to stay out on the field. I think Jeremy just very wisely realizing that there was only one more turn of that grassy terrain, and as much as he probably wanted to switch in a Pokemon to take that attack like he was doing in the previous games, being able to make that switch now when the terrain would come back on the field would be in play for 5 whole turns, most likely the remainder of this match. It's definitely going to be more beneficial. The last thing he wants to do is to lock in the Rillaboom in a situation where it doesn't have access to grassy terrain, especially given how much of a threat the Urshifu is to Jeremy's team in general.
Yeah, and Rillaboom switches in on that Entei slot, so that Rillaboom is possibly going to be taking a Surging Strikes for that Entei, who is much happier to do so. Zacian goes for the Behemoth Blade, though. This could connect into either one of these Pokemon, do a ton of damage. Connects onto that Calyrex, though. Enough for that knockout. We saw it would be a one-hit knockout without that Focus Sash, so having that Electro Web chip just guarantees that that is going to be enough to make that Calyrex end its turns here on the field. Surging Strikes from the Urshifu is going to connect with this Rillaboom, though. It does very little damage, even if it is 3 critical hits, of course. So Rillaboom, a great switch to take that, but that means that, you know, you've got Fake Out pressure next turn, you've got grassy glide pressure as well.
And you could also see the reveal of the Togekiss, at which point it would be nearly impossible for Alex to deal damage to that Rillaboom in the next turn. I don't think we'll see it quite yet, as Rillaboom is probably going to prefer going for a Fake Out into the Zacian or the Urshifu spot, really, followed up with an Entei attack. It depends on if Jeremy expects a Protect on the Zacian this turn, or possibly a Switch or a Protect on that Urshifu as well. If you expect the Protect, you pick the other Pokemon. If you expect a Switch, you target down that slot so you can pick up that knockout and really lock Alex into 3 of his remaining Pokemon, as right now he still does have the Pokemon advantage. The Regieleki doesn't have much health in the back of its party, but it still is there and can still help Alex out, especially if we do end up seeing that 3-minute warning like we did in Game 2.
Yeah, Zacian protects, though. Not going to deal with a Fake Out, not going to deal with a Sacred Fire, and the Urshifu also protects. So a really safe play from Alex just to scope out these moves. Extreme Speed, so it looks like a double target here. Extreme Speed and Grassy Glide from both the Pokemon onto that Urshifu slot. Both of them probably predicting that Zacian to protect and maybe a Surging Strikes here. So Jeremy didn't even go for that Fake Out.
No, and the extreme speed as well means that even if Alex is successfully able to go for an Aqua Jet onto that Entei, Entei will be able to attack, though I don't think Aqua Jet would do enough damage to knock out an Entei in one hit, especially if it is a little bit bulkier. So a tough spot for Alex to be in. You know, I like the double protect there, as that did give him an insight into what Jeremy's thinking. And it does put an interesting question on the board. You know, will Jeremy go for that double again, knowing that it's guaranteed to knock out this Urshifu as quickly as possible and then target the Zacian? Or will Jeremy take advantage of the fact that the Zacian cannot double protect this turn? The best it could do would be go for a substitute and try and connect a Sacred Fire with that slot to either break the sub, deal some damage, or possibly get a burn down. It's really Jeremy's turn to go on the offense here, and Alex is forced to adjust as a result.
Yeah, Incineroar will come in for that Urshifu, so it would take something like a Grassy Glide much better. We'll get another Intimidate down onto that Rillaboom. Rillaboom goes for the Grassy Glide, though, into the Incineroar, gets it down to just about 25% of its HP. Zacian gets the Behemoth Blade off first, though, So that Zacian could do some really good damage onto either. Sees that Rillaboom as the biggest threat, is enough to knock it out with that +1 boost from the Intrepid Sword. So now Rillaboom's off the field. Your Urshifu can come in far freer. Entei goes for the Sacred Fire, though, into the Zacian. It is not enough to knock it out. So a really nice bait, but the burn here. So a really tough burn, but not enough to knock out that Zacian, who can hang on at least from this grassy terrain.
Could be KO'd by Extreme Speed, though, at this range, I believe. And the thing about Extreme Speed is that it's in the same priority tier, I believe, as Fake Out. And as a result, I think that Entei should still be able to go for that attack, as Jeremy does reveal that Togekiss is the last Pokemon. Now that Zacian has been burned, I think this Togekiss feels a lot better about coming out onto the field. Doesn't have to worry about the Behemoth Blades as much anymore, and really a great play from Jeremy there. You know, going for the Grassy Glide onto that Urshifu, thinking, you know, if the Urshifu stays in, it's going to be taking some big damage from that. But then, you know, realizing that the Entei's bigger threat at that point in time was going to be the Zacian, and knowing that the Zacian can't protect, that was going to be a Sacred Fire onto whatever Pokemon came in. Could be the Incineroar for a little bit of chip, could have been the Regieleki for the knockout, but fortunately for Jeremy, connected with the Zacian and even got that burn. So as a result, I think that Alex still has the opportunity to deal some damage here. Can certainly flinch the Togekiss for his troubles. But really, the Zacian is not going to be able to last much longer than this turn.
Yeah, and Helping Hand goes before that Fake Out there, so it is still going to be able to help out its partner Pokemon Entei. Zacian gets that Behemoth Blade off, though, into the Togekiss, so that is going to bring it down pretty low, but not enough to do nearly as much damage as it may have wanted to. Entei goes for the Sacred Fire into the Incineroar, actually, so able to knock that Incineroar out, leave the Zacian on the field. This may allow him to get that free switch in to something like that Regieleki, like you said, but again, Extreme Speed, Gabby. It can be one of those moves that can really take out Alex's team because his Pokemon are pretty low health across the board.
Exactly. I don't think Zacian's really a threat anymore, barring something like a critical hit. And even then, you know, you're still going to have the burn sort of helping out with the damage. And as a result, I think that focusing in on the Pokemon that aren't Zacian, knowing that if there ever were to be a situation where Jeremy felt like, you know, okay, the Zacian has to go right now, that Extreme Speed can take care of it from this range is really important. You know, Alex does still have the full health Urshifu, who does have Aqua Jet. Like that is going to be super important against the Calyrex in the back of Jeremy's party, given that it has already been weakened, it's already been knocked out. It's down to just the Entei and the Togekiss for Jeremy. So like that Aqua Jet's going to be important when it comes to dealing damage, but really all Jeremy has to do here is figure out how this Togekiss can connect something like an Air Slash to this Urshifu, and that's going to be an easy knockout. Entei could also go for a Sacred Fire this turn onto that Urshifu, depending on who Alex decides to target, get a burn, and then ensure that the Togekiss will be able to survive for another turn. So this game is very, very close, and looks like even Zacian gets one more attack.
Zacian lives on 1 HP from that Extreme Speed, is going to be able to get this attack off into the Togekiss, is going to be able to knock it out even with that burn. An absolutely massive survive from that hit there, not getting knocked out. And this will allow this Urshifu to go for these Surging Strikes into this Entei. Like you said, Gabby, a very close end game for this Game 3. This is going to do a ton of damage. This should be plenty enough to knock it out here as well, now that we can see exactly how much it's doing, no matter how bulky this Entei is. So very well played by Alex at the end. Very nice for that Zacian to have stuck around, even if that Regieleki was in the back, but that Regieleki would have gotten taken down by an Extreme Speed, and I thought that Zacian was a goner as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we didn't see Jeremy go for that Protect on the Togekiss in that last turn, just to try and find time for Entei to burn that Urshifu to try and give Togekiss, you know, the opportunity to go on the offense. But, I mean, it is an Urshifu. It is going to be dealing big damage. It's possible that it didn't really make much of a difference at that point, and the Extreme Speed was the better play. So, you know, shout outs to Alex and Jeremy. That was such a close match. It was really incredible how close it felt, you know, in games 1 and games 2 and games 3 pretty consistently. And it just goes to show you why I think Spain and the US are two countries really gunning for top 4. And honestly, if they keep playing this well, I think either of them could easily move on to the finals. So I can't wait to see how the rest of this set is going to play out over this weekend.
Oh, absolutely. Really exciting match, like you said. Like you said too, game seemed very close. You saw game one, it really looked like Alex had the best turn one ever, but then Jeremy was able to capitalize and then made it turn two look like it was his game to win. So again, incredible play by two world-class players. Really exciting for us to be able to feature this match on stream. We still have one more match for you guys though, so don't go anywhere. Please stick around. We will be right back.